The 1979 revolution in Tehran entrenched fundamentalist Islam as the governing ideology of the country, which was renamed the Islamic Republic of Iran, with Ayatollah Khomeini as its supreme leader. Khomeini was a vicious anti-Semite and made the destruction of Israel one of the regime's main foreign policy goals. It has remained a major regime objective under Khomeini's successor, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. In September 2015, Khamenei declared, "As long as the stinking wound and infected gland called the Israeli government, i.e. Israel, is in the heart of the Islamic territories, we cannot feel we have won." Khamenei was echoing what Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, Iran's president from 1989 to 1997, the second most important man in the Islamic Republic, had said a few years earlier. Israel is a malignant cancer gland that needs to be uprooted. On the 14th of December 2001, at Tehran University, Rafsanjani also said that the use of even one nuclear bomb inside Israel will destroy everything, i.e. Israel can easily be eradicated through one single nuclear strike. One of Rafsanjani's successors, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, president from 2005 to 2013, echoed this sentiment, saying Israel should be wiped off the map. In November 1947, Iran's UN delegation voted with the Arab states against the General Assembly Resolution 181, opposed the partition of Palestine and the establishment of a Jewish state alongside an Arab one. And 2 years later, Iran voted against Israel's admission to the United Nations. But by March 1949, Iran already had a foreign ministry official, Abbas Segal, who spent time in Israel sorting out consular affairs, and in March of the following year, Iran accorded Israel de facto recognition, partly as a result of bribes paid to Iranian officials, and allowed the presence of non-diplomatic, i.e. Mossad, representation in Tehran. Developments which, by the 1970s, had blossomed into full-fledged diplomatic relations. From the early 1950s onwards, Israel courted the non-Arab Middle Eastern states and the non-Muslim and non-Arab minorities in Arab lands as potential allies in what it called the peripheral policy. Thus, it sought good relations with Turkey, Ethiopia, and the Christians of Lebanon and South Sudan, Iraq's Kurds, and Iran. The establishment of good relations with Iran was to be a slow process, but Iran's new Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who ruled the country from 1953 to 1979, was eventually game. While firmly autocratic, Mohammad Reza was also a Francophile, bent on westernizing and modernizing his country. He regarded Islam as backward-looking and primitive and sought to restore ancient Persian greatness through secularization and modernization. He described Cyrus the Great as one of the most dynamic men in history and regarded the years of Arab rule as backward. Iran became Israel's chief oil supplier. Today it is Azerbaijan. Israeli companies were invited to run major Iranian infrastructure projects, and Israeli-Iranian defense ties flourished, including, it was reported, Project Flower, a joint venture to build a long or medium-range missile. Iranian army and security service officers were secretly trained and occasionally advised by Israelis in both Israel and Iran. Word of this eventually leaked out, and many Iranians turned against Israel because of the country's reportedly close ties with Savak, the Iranian secret police, who often carried out extrajudicial killings and torture of opposition figures. But the Shah's days were numbered. In late 1979, Mohammad Reza and his aides underestimated the groundswell of opposition among many sectors of the Iranian public, including religious fundamentalists, liberals, and leftists. The cancer-riddled Shah and his army and security forces failed to respond to the mass protests forcefully enough, and the regime collapsed. The Shah fled to Cairo, where he died shortly afterwards. Khomeini returned from exile in Paris a hero, declared an Islamic Republic, arrested and killed thousands of the Shah's people, and then went on to crush his own erstwhile liberal and leftist allies. Khomeini dubbed the US the Great Satan and Israel the Little Satan, rescinded Iran's recognition of the Jewish state, and handed over its embassy to the PLO. Israel's diplomatic and security personnel escaped by the skin of their teeth. Khomeini was preparing to launch a pan-Muslim anti-Israel crusade, but history intervened. Iraq attacked Iran, which started a bitter 8-year war that cost at least 1 million Iranian lives. The Iranian army retaliated by launching human wave attacks, even sending children to clear minefields on foot. And Iran was willing to buy weapons from anyone who was selling them, even the Great and Little Devils. The secret deals that resulted were later known as the Iran-Contra Affair. Starting in 1981, the US sold Iran spare parts and small quantities of weapons. In the mid-80s, Israel was roped in. It shipped hundreds of US-made TOW anti-tank missiles, shells of various calibers, and more than a dozen US-made Hawk anti-aircraft missiles to Tehran, together with spare parts for tanks and aircraft. Israel was recompensed with upgraded American weapons and with money and oil shipments from Iran. The US used some of the money paid out by Tehran to finance and arm the anti-Sandinista Contra rebels in Nicaragua, hence Iran-Contra. The devastating Iran-Iraq War ended in a draw in 1988. Khomeini died the following year. His successor, Khamenei, was cut from the same ideological cloth. He was a fundamentalist Muslim, anti-Western, anti-Semitic, and anti-Israel. During Khamenei's first decade in power, Iran stepped up its nuclear program, which had been initiated during the Iran-Iraq War, with an eye to combating or deterring Iraq. Israel became its ultimate target, but Tehran also contributed to conventional warfare against Israel by massively arming Hezbollah, especially with rockets, and by supplying arms to Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. During the 34-day mini-war of July-August 2006 between Hezbollah and Israel, triggered by the killing of 5 IDF soldiers on patrol along the Israel-Lebanon border, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, officers were seen directing Hezbollah troops in the use of sophisticated weapons. These included the Chinese-built surface-to-ship C-802 missiles that almost sank an Israeli Navy corvette, the Hanit, which had failed to activate defense measures. The 2006 war ended in a stalemate after the IDF ground forces invaded southern Lebanon but were stopped by Hezbollah anti-tank missile crews south of the Litani River. The international community ordered a halt to hostilities, and the UN Security Council Resolution 1701 called on Hezbollah to withdraw to the north of the Litani, away from the border with Israel, and to disarm. In October, the IDF withdrew from southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah, flouting the UN ruling, increased its armaments and slowly re-infiltrated the area. The reinforced UN border force, UNIFIL, that's the United Nations Forces in Lebanon, failed to monitor or curb Hezbollah. What followed was a shadow war between Iran and Israel. Iran began consolidating a ring of fire around Israel's borders. In 2009, it started to arm the Houthi rebels in northern Yemen and the Islamist militias in Iraq and Syria, and to send arms via Sudan and the Egyptian-ruled Sinai to Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza. The IDF periodically intervened. The Israel Air Force, IAF, destroyed truck convoys in Sudan bound for Hamas, and in 2012, the IAF destroyed a Sudanese plant purportedly manufacturing arms for the Gazan terrorist groups. In March 2011, the Israeli Navy captured a ship conveying Iranian arms from Syria to Gaza. From 2009 to 2023, Iranian weapons shipments to Hezbollah were repeatedly hit by the IAF after they had been offloaded in Syrian airfields. Despite Israel's efforts, Iran's strategy ultimately succeeded. Today, Hezbollah reportedly has 150 to 200,000 rockets of varying capabilities, some of which can reach as far as Dimona and Eilat in southern Israel. The various other Iranian proxies between Yemen and Iraq all have serious drone and rocket abilities. Alongside their efforts to interdict Iranian munitions, Israel unleashed a covert campaign against Tehran's nuclear project. Mossad chief Meir Dagan assured Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the project could be halted by the clandestine operations, which would enable them to avoid an all-out war. The late Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon, once said that Dagan was an expert in separating an Arab from his head. Dagan's agents began assassinating Iranian nuclear scientists in Tehran. First to go was Masoud Ali Mohammadi, killed outside his home on the 12th of January 2010, allegedly by Jamil Fashi, who later confessed, according to the Iranians, that he had been trained by Mossad. Over the following years, 3 other Iranian scientists were killed and several more were wounded. Most were hit by motorcyclists who attached bombs to their cars. The last and most prominent to go was Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the head of the nuclear program, who was killed just outside Tehran while he was being driven to work on the 27th of November 2020. He died in a spectacular fashion, hit by a remote-controlled GPS-guided gun. His wife, who was sitting beside him, emerged unhurt. Iran later described Fakhrizadeh as a scientist who worked on COVID prevention. Mossad also organized the bombings of a number of installations connected to Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Apparently, with American help, Mossad managed to plant a virus known as Stuxnet in Iran's nuclear facilities. thereby severely damaging hundreds of centrifuges at the Natan uranium enrichment plant. Israeli agents also sold the Iranians faulty equipment, which further set back the nuclear project. The Iranian security agencies proved no match for Mossad, but at the end of the day, the Israelis failed to halt either the nuclear project of Iran's development, and the Iranians retaliated. In 2011 to 2012, they sent teams of terrorists to kill Israeli diplomats around the globe, in Turkey, Azerbaijan, Thailand, the United States, Argentina, Georgia, and India. Almost all the plots were frustrated by Israeli and local security agencies. No diplomats died. The most serious and successful attack, possibly carried out by Hezbollah operatives working on behalf of Iran, occurred in Bulgaria in July 2012 when bombers hit an Israeli tourist bus, killing 6, including the Bulgarian driver. Iran's overarching policy goals remained constant. On the 3rd of June 2018, Supreme Leader Khamenei tweeted, "Our stance against Israel is the same stance we have always taken. Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor in the West Asian region that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible and it will happen." 3 years earlier, he had predicted that Israel will not see the end of these, i.e. the next 25 years. Iran continued to aim its proxies, including sporadic low-level attacks, rocketing, occasional terrorist infiltrations, designed to divert Israeli attention and resources away from the nuclear threat, and preparing for the fateful day when they would unleash a massive, multi-front conventional attack on Israel. The use of proxies allowed Tehran a degree of plausible deniability, and made it less likely that Israel would retaliate directly against Iran itself. At the same time, by massively arming Hezbollah, they deterred Israel from striking at Iran's nuclear installations before the bomb was ready. Then, on the 7th of October 2023, Hamas attacked southern Israel. The organization had spent a decade planning and preparing the attack, yet Israel's intelligence services had failed to realize what was afoot. The Hamas leaders played their cards close to their chests. They did not, it appears, give Tehran or Hezbollah prior warning of the planned date of the attack. But Hamas's leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, certainly expected Hezbollah to eventually join in, and Hezbollah did on the 8th of October.